Good evening, everybody. I am Brett L. Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, I can't find the bumper. We're sitting here looking at all these comments for last week. We loved all the comments. Hope we get a bunch more. Please throw at us any start, sit, any trade questions, anything you want to talk about. We're all for it. But damn it, if we don't have to start the show off once again with a terrible injury, and that happened Monday night. We had a good game going. We had Nick Chubb off to his typical Nick Chubb start, and unfortunately, he has a serious knee injury. Thankfully, I was glad they decided not to show it. I hate seeing those things, so I was glad I didn't have to see it. But from what I heard, it was awful to see, and it's certainly awful if you're a fantasy manager or fan of the Cleveland Browns, but more importantly, if you're a fan of NFL football. Ever since this guy's gotten in the league, man, he's come out right away, and he's been a fantasy one running back. 996 yards his rookie year in 2018, 1,494, 1,067, 1,259, and then 1,525 yards last year. I mean, every year the guy produces, and what a big loss for the NFL.
No, a massive loss for the Cleveland faithful. And look, you're not replacing Nick Chubb. Averaging 6.1 yards per carry. If you include his 4 receptions on 4 targets, he's averaging 6 yards per touch. He's the best, one of the best, top 3, I'll say, pure runners in the NFL. He's a complete highlight show. He can run between the tackles. He can bounce it outside. He's an elite runner. Kareem Hunt, they're bringing him back in. A lot of question marks about, what does this mean for, it's a $4 million deal to play the remaining 15 games. This is a guy that averaged 3.8 yards per carry, which is a career low last year. He did give you 35 receptions on 44 targets. I think he can help you in the passing game, but I think Jerome Ford has proven he's the RB1. I don't see that changing. I think Kareem Hunt's going to have to work himself back in. Yes, he's familiar with the offense. Yes, he was there last year. I'm still firing up Jerome Ford, depending on who else I have on my chart, but certainly over Kareem Hunt this week. But devastating loss, man. Absolutely devastating loss.
Yeah.
Pure highlight reel.
I agree with you, though. Yeah, we'll say that again.
I say he's a pure highlight reel. I mean, he's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Run the rock.
He is so much fun to watch. Breaks my heart. And, Jerome Ford showed a little juice, though. He had a nice 70-yard run. I think he had like 115 yards. He, like you, I definitely like him over Hunt. Everyone talked about, if you were on Twitter the last couple of days, that's all we heard about was how, if they wanted Hunt so bad over Ford, they would have never not re-signed him. So this is a definite Jerome Ford situation for me as regards that he's the guy that I'm going to play over Hunt. So we'll see how it goes. In other news, Cam Akers today traded to the Minnesota Vikings. Cam Akers and a conditional 26th rounder go to the Vikings, while the Los Angeles Rams get a 26th round pick back. First thoughts are not a lot of draft capital. There wasn't, a lot of people talked about how they thought but there's just a lot of juice coming out early on this week. Who are possible targets for him to go? And the talk kind of made you think that maybe some teams were really serious in wanting him. And my thoughts were, if the teams were really serious to want him, you would see better picks being involved in this. So obviously they're not investing a lot in him. They have a need because Madison, and you're going to kind of get into the reasons why, but he has struggled. And as a longtime Cam Akers manager holder, I drafted him a lot in the 2020 rookie class. It seems like every year was always just trying to continue to hang on for hope, whether it be his rookie year where he came on strong, second year came on strong late, second year suffers the injury. We don't see him until the Super Bowl run. But again, we got hope because here's a guy who came back from an injury that a lot of people feel should take longer than a year to recover from. And then year 3 last year, he really struggled early on, was back on the trade block. But then he gave us the year at the end, and you kind of saw a number 1 running back where he had multiple 100-yard games with touchdowns included. So it just has always been about hope. And unfortunately now I think the hope is gone. The only good thing I can say is that, some team decided that they want him when the Rams obviously didn't. So I guess that gives you a little hope that maybe there may be something, but there ain't much left, Coach.
Yeah, I think this is literally, they didn't like what they saw out of Alexander Madison now that moved on from Dalvin Cook. And they didn't like enough what they saw in Ty Chandler and Kenny Nguanu, who's more of a special teams return guy. that you turn and you said, hey, look, Cam Akers has shown flashes at the NFL level to be a guy that can get you touches. But look, through 2 games, 22 carries, 29 yards. Yes, he found the end zone once. He's averaging 1.3 yards per carry, no targets on the season. And now you go from what was the LA Rams offense of Sean McVay to now the Minnesota offense, which historically has been a team that liked to run the football, especially with Mike Zimmer was there. And Kevin O'Connell's opened up that offense, which we knew that he would. But you look at let's take a look at Madison through the first 2 games. 19 carries, 62 yards, no touchdowns. Okay, 6 grabs, 21 yards, one receiving touchdown. That's 25 touches for only 83 yards at 3.3 yards per touch. But let's take a deeper dive. Let's look at the offensive line. I put this on Twitter. It's funny, you post some things on Twitter, you never know how much engagement you're going to get. But the PFF run grade for that offensive line, which is a big question mark coming this season. Your left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, I get it. He didn't play last week, but in 58 run snaps, he's got a 65.1 PFF grade. David Quisenberry, who played 19 snaps at left tackle, 59.9. Ole Udo, who has played 45 snaps, is at 50.5. Left guard Ezra Cleveland, 52.8. Their center, Austin Schlottman, has been playing for Garrett Bradbury. He's only played 7 snaps, 50.4. Your right guard Ed Ingram, 51.1 and 122 snaps. Your right tackle Brian O'Neill, also 122 snaps, who's played every snap. He's the bright spot at 90.1. The problem is if you're not strong on the interior, right, then you've got to figure out, we run outside zone, wide zone. We've got to find ways to get our guys out in space. This offensive line is a train wreck right now. And so Cam Akers is not really moving into a better situation other than whatever it is that's going inside that locker room between him and Sean McVay. And I'm assuming his running back coach, we know how deep that can get. They were done. They were ready to move on. They tried it last year. They finally were able to move on from him. And now he lands in Minnesota, which, again, it's addition by subtraction for the Rams. You get rid of the noise in the locker room, whatever's going on. And for Minnesota, it was a huge need. It's a guy at least has seen some volume at the NFL level and had a little bit of success. So I get the move, but
it cost him very little. It
didn't cost him anything, and you take a shot and you see what happens. So I get the move for both sides.
All right, let's move on to another running back situation in the NFL, and that's with Saquon Barkley. Yeah. Bad news was it looked pretty awful right off the bat when you saw him coming off on the sidelines. A lot of people were, the Twitter doctors or ex-doctors went right to 3 to 4, maybe 5 weeks out with it. Good news, though, is early on this week they said, hey, no, he's recovering pretty nicely. He might be back for Thursday. That's not going to happen, so he's definitely out this week. But it sounds like it may not be as long as thought early on. You like Matt Breida at all? Are you going to do anything with their running backs with Barkley out?
Yeah, he doesn't move the needle for me. I mean, I get if you're in deeper leagues, if you're struggling, you didn't grab a whole lot of running backs in the running back dead zone, so to speak, or what we call zero running back, where you grab a lot of handcuff guys. Matt Breida was certainly not on the top of your list, right? So you got an undrafted free agent out of Georgia Southern. He's got some receptions, over 100 receptions over his career. 4.4 speed guy, but he's just not a guy that gives you a whole lot to me in the run game. Yes, he's 4.8 yards per carry and very limited touches, right? It's more of a, change of pace type of deal. Then you get to Gary Brightwell, who's a round 6 guy out of the University of Arizona, which you and I both know very well. He's only got 1 carry for 5 yards. So then you go to Eric Gray, who's the rookie out of Oklahoma, as a 5th round pick. So this backfield and an offense that got absolutely dominated in week 1 by Dallas, 40-0. Then you come back in week 2. You had to come back after being down 21-7 to Arizona, and that was mostly on the arm of Daniel Jones, so especially once Barkley got hurt. It's going to be a struggle moving forward with this run game for the New York Giants, and unfortunately for Daniel Jones, that's not good because he played very well last year when he had Saquon Barkley in that huddle, and now you don't have that. So you go back to his rookie year when he didn't have Barkley either, and this is a tough deal for Daniel Jones and the New York Giants.
Well, they got a real tough matchup this week, and we'll get into that one in a few minutes. But I'm sure if you're glad Saquon's going to miss a game, maybe this week is the one to miss. Moving on, and we're going to kind of hit these kind of briefly. Deontay Johnson, we talked a lot about his injury last week as he missed last week's game. He was moved to the IR, so that means he's now going to be out for at least 4 games. Next injury we see is Jalen Waddle, concussion protocol. Did not practice today. You know how those go, Coach. They can wake up Sunday morning, takes another test. He could be back in. So that's obviously something you got to monitor. This one, they've struggled mightily on offense. That's Cincinnati. I read a report today where there's a very real possibility he's going to be out this week. Calf strain re-aggravated. He kind of called it day-to-day earlier in the week, but like I said, there's kind of a little bit of talk that this could be an injury that'll definitely cost him a couple weeks, or at least this week. What are your thoughts? Would you play him at 0-2, or are you going to kind of sit him and just hope that you can come back from the way you started the season, but do it with a healthy Burrow?
Well, I mean, here's the sad part, right? These calf strains are they're finicky, and we both know that. And so you're saying you're 0-2 and a team that had Super Bowl aspirations, and now you've tried to push it to get him to play, try to take all the precautions that you could in the training room and limiting reps in practice and making sure he's involved. But it's now Jake Browning, who's an undrafted free agent out of the University of Washington, has had one career pass attempt, which was last week. So there's not a whole lot there. It's too late you're not going to grab a quarterback off the street and he's going to be ready to play this weekend. So if it's not Joe, but here's the deal. If Joe Burrow's injury, and I think there's a good chance he just re-aggravates it even worse and now has to miss a significant amount of time, it's not worth it just 2 weeks in to continue to play him. I would take, and you have to at some point side on the side of caution with players that are your franchise. And so if it's not something where they feel 100% confident that he's good to go and there's no risk of really aggravating that much worse than it already is, then, you throw him out there. And I know Joe Burrow is a competitor. We saw what he did at LSU. We saw what he's done already in his brief career in the NFL. I know he's going to want to play, but you've got to be able to just make the smartest decision for your franchise long term.
Coach, you want to attack this question here from Justine? Drop Kelly for Spears. I'm assuming this is redraft. Half PPR with Henry's turf toe.
Drop Kelly for Spears, half PPR with Henry's turf toe. Turf toes, hey, that's Derrick Henry's about as bad and as tough as they come. But those turf toes
we can talk about the injury since we hadn't brought that up. But go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a higher on Spears. I know there's people that like Joshua Kelly. I know with the Cam Akers situation, it's easy to sit there and take a look at that and say, hey, I think this is a guy that's going to go RB1 volume. I think Sean McVay is going to have to do what he's done so far. Matthew Stafford looks really good. He's throwing the ball around the elbow, seems to be fine. You've got Puka Nacua. You're getting Cooper Kupp coming back.
But what do they have to do with Josh Kelly with the Chargers?
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I was thinking Kyron Williams. Yeah, Josh Kelly with the Chargers. Sorry about that. I would go Spears over Josh Kelly with the Chargers, 100%. I think there's not – Spears to me is a more talented back, and he's got an opportunity if Henry does miss time. He's a guy that I'm more excited about than I would be with Josh Kelly. Sorry about that. I don't know why I was thinking Kyron Williams, all this Cam Akers talk.
There you go. Well, hope that answers that question. And I like what Alex just said here. We'll put this comment up. We need to wrap these guys up. It is brutal. It's rough when you feel like, everyone tells you if you're 0-2, chill, relax. But, God, it does get frustrating, and it's real frustrating when you don't have your real team out there because whatever the reason with injuries. But just hit on Joe Burrow. Let's move on to Anthony Richardson. Concussion protocol. No, like Deontay Johnson, or excuse me, not Deontay Johnson, like Jalen Waddle did not practice, but could be okay, good to go as we move on longer in the week. I wonder, though, you talk about taking the side of precaution, him being a young running back, young quarterback, but him being almost running back he did get hurt on his second touchdown run. Would you playing him if he passes the test Sunday, or are you going to maybe chill with him?
Yeah, if he passed the test, I'm playing him. I think, and again, it always comes down to what people's fantasy rosters look like. But if he's a go,
I'm not worried about that. I'm talking as the Indianapolis Colts as an organization.
Yeah, I'm comfortable playing him.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. This guy will not play. That's David Montgomery, thigh injury, expected to miss a couple of weeks. Sure hope he's done well. Did have a fumble last week that kind of hurt them a bit, but hopefully we get more. Jamar Gibbs out there, and we'll see what that looks like. Jamal Williams, former Detroit running back, hamstring issue with the New Orleans Saints. Sounds like it'll be multiple weeks. This backfield's kind of muddy until we see Kamara back.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I picked up Jamal Williams on a couple leagues. I felt like, did I expect him to be who he was in Detroit last year? No. But you had Kamara out for the first 3 games. You had Kendra Miller coming in as a rookie out of TCU, and so you felt like he's battling some injuries. So you felt like, hey, these first couple weeks, a great chance for Jamal Williams to get his 20 carries. He's probably going to give you 65 to 70 yards, but he's going to find the end zone. And that hasn't been the case. And it was actually Tony Jones who came in last week once Jamal was down and got a couple of touchdowns. And now you move on. So yeah, I mean, what do you do, right? To me, it's Tony Jones or Kendra Miller moving forward. So.
And you just lay again. I was kind of expecting a little more from Kendra Miller at this point. And now again, being an old school guy, I can remember when you got 150, 200, 300 yards from a rookie running back in year one. You were like, okay, you got some run. Now we expect it to come right here and now. And if it doesn't, you get worried pretty quick. So I think the fact that Kendra kind of hasn't done much so far just takes a lot of the concerns that I had with Kamara coming back and his usage going forward. I think it's going to be full bore Kamara as soon as he gets back.
Oh, it is. And hey, I think Kendra Miller is a great talent at TCU, almost 1,400 yards and 6 yards a carry last year. And he didn't do a ton in terms of the receiving game. He did have 16 grabs last year, but, over the course of his college career, I think he's got less than 30, if I remember off the top of my head. But so I do like him as a prospect, but this is Kamara's backfield.
All right, hey, let's move on to 2 guys that we were asked about earlier, and that's Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler. Both of them did not practice yet. Likely both. I would assume that Eckler, I think, is definite out this week. Aaron Jones, early on, he talked about it being day-to-day, but it doesn't look good if he wasn't out there today. So I don't think either one of them will be back. Did get a little good news as far as the Packers are concerned. Christian Watson, full participant. A lot of people were very high on him coming into the year after what he did late in the season last year. And as a guy who's heavily invested in the Packer offense with guys like Jordan Love and Jaden Reed, you can kind of see he needs a little more out there. Jordan Love I'm referring to, and hopefully Christian Watson will kind of, give him another target that he can hit downfield.
Yeah, we both love Jaden Reed, right? But he's a scat guy. We loved his what he did in college, but he's a guy that is catch the ball underneath, get him in space, let him make some plays, the yards after the catch. When you don't have, and Luke Musgrave, we like him as an athlete, we like Romeo Doubs. When you don't have that guy with that elite speed that can really take the top off and take that safety with you, or split the safeties in a 2 high and work that intermediate area, you had Christian Watson on offense, and now all of a sudden you get the full gunpowder of that offense and what they can do. So I'm excited to see Christian Watson. I'm hoping he gets back here quick this week and can make a difference. I think that's a lot. That's a huge thing for Jordan Love.
I think it's a huge thing too, also from Alex's guy and my guy, Jaden Reed, because 100%. It's going to open up more of the field and Luke Musgrave. So I sure hope this is the week that we finally get to see Christian Watson. All right, hey, we're going to let you kick off this one. I'll mention it. I'll talk about it briefly, but your Dallas Cowboys coach, you got to be excited. Now I know that the Jets kind of came in and they did not have the Aaron Rodgers that we all hoped for. And Zach Wilson did give you 3 interceptions and so forth. And Dalvin Cook fumbled the ball away. And for whatever reason, week 2 did not see a lot of usage out of Breece Hall. But despite all that, even if those guys were good and going, man, Dallas sure looks like they're a Super Bowl contender, don't they, Coach?
Yeah, and hey, look, I try to be as objective as I can, and the reality is it's 70-10 in terms of points scored versus points against. They've created 7 turnovers in just 2 games. They've got the sacks, they've got the pressures. That front 7 is playing really, really well, especially on that D line. You're allowing their multiple safeties to play down a little bit lower in the box. You're forcing quarterbacks to have to beat you in the passing game. Now you got Stephon Gilmore, you got Tyron Diggs, you got Donovan Wilson, you got Malik Hooker, and they're loaded on the defensive side of the ball and very deep. But I've learned as a Cowboys fan, right? You got to pump the brakes a little bit. It's only 2 games in. What I was more impressed with was Dak Prescott, and honestly with Mike McCarthy calling the offense. He's getting them in and out of the huddle. He's getting them in space, getting the ball to Dak's hands quickly. They're not challenging teams vertically as much as Kellen Moore did and putting Dak in positions to try to make something happen. They're riding that defense. Their special teams is playing well. They're allowing Dak just to sit back and play quarterback and play point guard, and it's made a huge difference. But and then, they get the Arizona Cardinals this week in Arizona. Arizona played really competitive last week against the Giants, gave up a 14-point lead, lost at the end of the game. But Dallas should steamroll this week, and they're going to be 3-0, and it's going to get down to week 5 when they play, I think, your San Francisco 49ers. That's the first test for me, is
You
that
stop
game against
saying
San
that.
Francisco. Yeah, well, it is, right?
I mean,
Is it not?
if you're gonna give me a team, give me the Green Bay. I don't really have a team. I'm not
fair
like
enough.
you. I kind of already told you. We've already talked about this when the Raiders and the Rams left in 1991 or 92. Man, it all became nothing but fantasy. So it's very rare that I root for a team all year long. But this year, with all that I'm invested in that Packer offense, I will be watching most of their games. But one more thing I want to add about Dallas that I was kind of excited to see, and I drafted a lot, and I hope I get his name right. I drafted a lot of Luke Schoonmaker late in drafts, and I mean late third, fourth rounds. And, it was nice to see Deuce Vaughn getting some action. It was nice to see Schoonmaker get 16 snaps, scored a touchdown. Deuce Vaughn getting in there. So it's kind of neat to see them utilizing some of those rookies pretty early.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn's fun to watch, isn't he? Little 5'5" dude coming out of the backfield. And let's get to the next one, man. I'm excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, you know what? I think after week 1, you kind of felt like, okay, maybe. Now, don't get me wrong. I invested heavily in my home league fab to get him, and I was fortunate to do so. But Puka Nacua, he follows up his first game in the pros of 10 receptions for 119 yards, follows that up with 20 targets, 15 receptions, 147 yards. This is without practicing most of the week with a groin issue. And so I'll tell you, man, what are we watching here? To me, it looks like we're watching someone who is going to make all those people talk about draft capital like this is an aberration, but this happened.
It's funny. Him and Cooper Kupp are very similar in size, and they both ran 4.62 at the combine. The difference is Cooper Kupp's got elite agility, and Nacua didn't score well in terms of his athletic profile. But it was going into last week that everybody's really concerned. Everybody spent all their fab and was like, hey, do I sit him this week against San Francisco? What do I do? And in one of my leagues, I picked him up, but with 22 leagues, I forgot to put him in my lineup. I ended up losing. I wouldn't have lost even if I had played him, so it was okay. But you play against San Francisco and you get 20 targets, 15 grabs, 147 yards. The only thing this guy has not done is find the end zone.
He's getting the end zone.
That's it. So if you think there's not a role for Puka when Cooper Kupp comes back, and I get it, he's running the Cooper Kupp scheme right now in terms of how Sean McVay is utilizing him in the offense and the role that he's playing. Now you give me 2 of those guys. I mean, all that does is make that Sean McVay's offense that much better. The guy that loses out the most is Tyler Higbee. Puka Nacua is going to be fine. He's going to put up the same numbers when Kupp comes back. No, but he's still going to be a relevant part of this offense. Absolutely. I think he's proven that.
Let's go over a couple of these questions. You were dealing with Blake a few minutes ago. He now tells you that he has Saquon, James Cook, Kenny Gainwell, Najee, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex. So he can play up to 4 running backs here. While you're looking at that, I'm going to talk to Ryan. Any thoughts on Tank Dell? I was really excited about 2 things as it relates to Tank Dell. First, he got some real play last week. 7 receptions. I think it was 70 yards. I believe he got in the end zone. And what I really liked is that they're not afraid to let that rookie quarterback throw the ball. You had C.J. Stroud throwing for almost 400 yards. The guy, they're not afraid to use him, and they're opening up the offense, and he's showing that he has the ability. You got to remember, as it relates to Tank Dell, he worked out a bit with C.J. Stroud during the pre-draft and after the draft. Well, actually, pre-draft, he worked out with him, and he made it known, man, if you're taking me, do what you can. I really like this guy. I think we have good chemistry. So if you're asking me, should you pick him up? Pick him up at all costs. If you're asking me if you should start him this week, don't know who else you have. And I would kind of like to see a little bit more from him if that offense continues to do what it does.
He has proven he's a second option in that offense. I think a lot of people thought that would be Dalton Schultz's security blanket. And Schultz, the knock on him has always been, it doesn't give you a lot of yards after the catch. He doesn't create a lot of great separation, but he's a great security blanket in terms of finding the end zone in the red zone and being able to find the sticks on first downs. But I'm real high on Tank Dell, and I think he's proven outside of Nico Collins, who's your field stretcher, your intermediate, runs the digs, runs the comebacks, can run the curls, can give you something on the slant and go. But I love Tank Dell. I liked him coming out as a prospect, and I like him even more seeing him in only 2 games with a rookie quarterback in this Bill O'Brien offense. So I'm very excited about Tank Dell and the future of that franchise right now.
It's pretty exciting. I think they got to be pretty happy with what they've seen so far, because as we were talking about them earlier today, and when they're competing, they're going out and they're competing, and you can't ask for any more out of a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
Before we jump back into our script and what the other games we were going to talk about or other storylines, Sammy Clark, should I drop Cousins for Love? I'm the biggest Love guy in the world. I'm not dropping Cousins for Love right now. Not with Jefferson, not with the way they've already shown that they like to throw the ball or need to throw the ball. They're much better at pass protection, as Coach brought up earlier in the show. So I'm not quite ready to do that.
No, and I'm a huge believer in Kevin O'Connell, what he does with their offense. I'm not giving up Kirk Cousins. I think their passing game, especially now with Dalvin Cook being traded and Alexander Madison, the struggles with that offensive line, they're going to have to rely on the passing game. I expect them to be in more negative game scripts.
A lot of negative script. Yep.
So, hey, let's go to Blake's question real quick, because I know we need to get back to that.
Yes,
so he talked about his lineup: 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex. So I don't know who you have at the receiver position, but out of the guys you have, Saquon's obviously out. You've got James Cook. We know the situation with Kenny Gainwell. I am still, as much as I love Jaylen Warren and what he is doing, of those guys you have, of the 2 running backs I would pick would be James Cook and Najee Harris. I'm still not there on Kenny Gainwell as far as where he's at health-wise. And to me, DeAndre Swift stole that RB1 position. If he's not a guy they're going to feed consistently, I don't know what Philadelphia is doing. So I know, if I remember Ryan well enough, he's a big Eagles fan, so he'll appreciate that. But yeah, and I know that was Blake's question, but I would, those are the 2 guys that I would start, the options you have, depending on who you have at wide receiver to play in those flex spots. What do you think, Brett?
I agree. I mean, he was asking if he should. It looked like to me it was more of a Matthew Breida. Should I pick him up to play for those guys?
Not playing Breida.
And I wouldn't, most importantly, because they're playing the San Francisco 49ers. So I wouldn't pick him up for that. Let's move on to our next game. Keep the questions going, guys. We love it. We don't need to get into any of this, man. We enjoy doing this. Seattle travels to Detroit, earns a big win. Holy crap, they go out there and put up a goose egg, not necessarily on the scoreboard, but play poorly against the Los Angeles Rams in week 1. Week 1, Detroit goes out and beats the defending Super Bowl champs on a Thursday night in front of the world. And here we are a week later, and we get to see we see Seattle going on the road and beating them in overtime. What are your thoughts on that game, Coach?
Well, bounce back game for Geno Smith, right? He struggled in week 1. There was a lot of commentary about, hey, this guy was a nobody until he finally got an opportunity last year with Pete Carroll. In a season they thought they're rebuilding, and he had a great year last year. This was his bounce back game. He goes 32 of 41, 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. What I like that Seattle is doing is they're using Kenneth Walker. I'm surprised they're not using Zach Charbonnet more, but they're using Kenneth Walker. He seems to be the guy. Found the end zone twice last week. And when you've got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and JSN in your offense, I think that was the biggest thing for me, was just seeing, first of all, it was a great game, but secondly, it was just seeing Geno Smith have that bounce back game and say, hey, look, I understand the first week was a little bit rough for us. We got upset by the Rams 30-13, but hey, we're here to stay. We're going to compete for a division title, and this is what you can expect to see moving forward. So it was good to see that. Man, what a great game. And I feel for Detroit. I've become a Detroit Lions fan, if you want to maybe adopted them as my second favorite team. But I love what Dan Campbell and organization is building, so I love to see them continue to win. But big bounce back game for Seattle.
The fact that they're both 1-1 at this point, you kind of, I kind of thought Seattle would have been 1-1 with a win in week 1 and a loss in week 2.
And a loss in week 2. Me too.
Yeah, and vice versa for Detroit. But before we get into our next story, let's look at some of these questions. We got first question to Todd. The question is, Tank Bigsby in my home league, or I grabbed him in my league. First and foremost, is dynasty or redraft? I think if it's dynasty, I'm not worried at all. It's redraft. If I got a deep bench in redraft and I can keep them and it's not really affecting me, I'm going to hold him. I don't think I'm not going to worry about it if I'm not having to play him and if I got a bench big enough for him. But in dynasty, I'm definitely holding him. Sammy Clark, here we go. Is Breece Hall make or break? If I have Brees Hall, the leagues that I do, I'm almost forced to play him. I'm not very deep. And he is kind of make or break at this point. But you feel like we didn't get much from him. Again, I don't know if that was because of the Dallas matchup. I don't know if they made a conscious decision to just kind of chill or let's push him a little bit more the next week. But obviously wasn't happy with his usage. But again, coming off the ACL, I'm playing him if I have him in most of my leagues. I can tell you that.
I'm absolutely. I believe 100% in the talent. I watched a lot of Iowa State games when he
Oh
was
yeah.
there. I believe, and people were concerned with Dalvin Cook coming on. To me, it was a smart move for Robert Saleh prior to the Aaron Rodgers injury. You feel like this is a championship Super Bowl contending team, though. So you wanted to bring him in as security. But Brees Hall looked explosive in week 1. I get the lack of touches last week, but I'm absolutely hanging in there with Brees Hall, and I have no hesitation with that whatsoever. The talent is obvious.
Yes, sir. I love Brees Hall. Again, we talk about it every time we bring him up. I'm looking at his jersey right there. This is a big question, Coach. We got a trade question. Hey, if you guys can help us out, though, we have to know whether or not if it's redraft or if it's dynasty. So we'll get to that one in a few minutes. Let's move on to our next game. Tennessee, man, the Chargers. I talked about it in week 1. Disappointing loss once again for the Chargers. And we talked about possibly Brandon Staley worried about his job. And I think he needs to going forward. They can't seem to get it done. And this is a roster that's as good as anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, there's some real concerns. And, if the Chargers can't get it done, I was excited about Kellen Moore going there with Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler. We get the injury with Eckler, Mike Williams, you bring in Quentin Johnston, you've got Keenan Allen. And I just felt like, hey, they're going to cook. And unfortunately, there's been a struggle at the beginning of this season with the Chargers. And look, Brandon Staley's a defensive guy. The defense is the worst part of this team right now. If you want to compare offense versus defense, like I'm more concerned about the defense. And you've got Derwin James, you've got Joey Bosa, you've got some guys flat on that defense that are legitimate playmakers, and they cannot figure out how to stop anybody right now. I mean, to lose to Tennessee, the thing with Tennessee is they want to ground and pound. They're going to try. DeAndre Hopkins didn't do anything last week. And he's coming off the ankle injury, and you're going to ground and pound. You're going to try to control the clock and keep the other team's offense off the field. And it was the other way around, and I should say that's exactly what they did. The Chargers could not get their defense off the field. So I've got real concerns about the Chargers moving forward.
Yeah, it was rough. And it's just something, again, now that they're in LA, all I hear about is them and the Rams. And people are really starting to turn. One big thing, that if you had Keenan Allen, man, that guy just continues to do it week in and week out.
Yeah.
They're great for fantasy because they always have a negative script, and they have some pretty damn good guys on the offensive side of the ball. Let's move on to our last game, and this is the one that kind of hurts. It doesn't hurt if you're an Atlanta Falcon fan, but really disappointed what I saw from Green Bay in the fourth quarter. 11-point lead, and they just didn't seem to do much at all offensively from the Falcons. We didn't see, again, still not much from their big three, other than, rephrase that, their two top-notch receivers that we thought we were going to be getting with Pitts and, London. But it was nice to see London. Yeah, it was nice to see London back in the offense. But, Atlanta's 2-0. They beat a team that I really like, and you got to be impressed with that. And I sure hope Green Bay will get Christian Watson gets back on the right foot this week.
Yeah, and as well, Jordan Love, 3 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. First year as a starter there as a full-time guy, so he's got 6 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks, but only 151 yards passing us last week, only completed about 58% of his passes. So, but hey, Atlanta's a team, again, that we just talked about this with the last team, can ground and pound it. Atlanta, surprisingly, Desmond Ridder throws the ball 32 times, 230 yards, and gets a touchdown. They get Drake London more involved this week, which I think we called that on our show. We talked about Drake London. People were talking about, hey, should I drop him? Should I panic? It's like, hey, Drake London, the talent is there. I'd be more concerned about Kyle Pitts than Drake London right now. But a big win for Atlanta. And again, they're 2-0. It's ugly. I've joked around about this plenty of times. If I'm a wide receiver or a pass catcher and I'm up in the draft, Atlanta's on the clock, I'm telling my agent, dude, I'm not going to Atlanta. I'm not doing it, but hey, a win is a win is a win. And if you win ugly, that's okay. But I'm telling you right now, you're not winning Super Bowls and making a playoff run the way they're playing on offense right now. You can't
Well,
in
I don't know if
today's
they're doing
NFL.
that
You've got to
this
be able
year
to score
anyway.
points. Yeah,
I
I
agree,
agree
but
with you.
if they're trying to establish an old school almost offense and just pound it down your throat with those two guys and just hope that you can get big plays sporadically out of their skill guys, I mean, it's not a bad recipe, but what's got to happen is more of hitting those guys in big time needy plays because we still haven't seen too much of that from Desmond Ritter.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed, though. Jaden Reed, I've been talking about him. Alex has been talking about him. 2
We love Jaden
touchdowns,
Reed.
8 targets. Yeah, I think we're all on the Jaden Reed bandwagon. Thursday night football, big game tomorrow. Thursday night, we're going to treat this section like we do every Sunday morning. This week, we're going to go on at 8, not at 8:30. Coach has got a big day of watching games with some
I do.
of your mates. There you go. So here we go. We got New York 1-1 after rallying to beat Arizona last week, and San Francisco 2-0, who are still impressive, but a lot of people thought they were going to be able to handle the Rams a little more than they did. Maybe the Rams are a little more for real than most people got or most people thought. San Francisco minus 10.5 favorite. Over and under is 45. I'll go ahead and pick who wins first. I've got San Francisco winning 33-21 over the Giants.
Wow, you got the Giants scoring 21, huh?
I do.
All right.
I do.
I've got with no Barkley. I've got San Francisco at 34. So we're close there. You got them at 33. I got them at 34. And for you guys that are watching, we do not share these notes. So when we pick these games, I've got San Francisco 34-10. I think that San Francisco defensively right now, you're seeing what Dallas is doing. You've got what Philly's defense is supposed to be. You've got the Jets defense, what they're supposed to be. I think San Francisco is trying to make a statement. There's a reason why we're number one in most people's power rankings. They've got a phenomenal roster. I think they continue to ride that momentum. Brock Purdy continues to make all the right decisions. And even with Ayuk potentially being out with the shoulder injury, you've got Deebo Samuel, you've got George Kittle, you got CMC. I even think Elijah Mitchell, if they're up early and often, could get an opportunity to get a lot of volume in the second half and be relevant in terms of fantasy and a deeper dive. But I just think San Francisco runs away with this one. I just think Barkley being out and that what that offensive line has done so far this year, I think it's going to be a struggle for New York to put any points on the board and stop San Francisco.
Hey, I'm probably full of crap with that 21 points, but hey, as a guy who's heavily invested in the Giants offense, even though Barkley's not out there, we can always hope. Let's talk about starts and sits. I'll go first briefly. I already kind of said, Daniel Jones is really the only guy that you're probably playing this week. Maybe. I mean, a lot of people drafted Darren Waller pretty early, so you may have to play him. But other than that, I'm not playing anyone else. What are you doing with the New York Giants offense?
Yeah, I think, as far as I'm not starting anybody. I think we talked about this. The only guy that I may be interested in start, first of all, try to figure out, let me take that back. I'm starting Darren Waller. The only guy that I might think about starting outside of him is Daniel Jones. And I only say that I get the pressure that San Francisco can bring. I get the potential for turnovers. But when you have a quarterback that can use his legs the way Daniel Jones can, I think he has to be smart in this game. And if he doesn't see something early, it's like your progression, right? You've got a first, second, third read on most pass concepts. If you don't see something in that first and second, I'm looking for an A, B, C, or D gap release, and I'm getting out. I'm going to try to, if I can get cheap first downs, I'm going to find them with my legs, keep the chains moving, keep their offense off the field. That's what the Giants are going to have to do to have a chance in this game. So it's Darren Waller for sure for me, because again, you drafted him early as one of the top 5 tight ends this year. So you're playing Darren Waller in a negative game script. You're going to have to throw the football. He's the most reliable pass catching option they have. So that's it. And again, if you're super flex, you drafted 2 quarterbacks and figured you'd gamble with that, or you've got 3 quarterbacks and Aaron Rodgers is one of them. You may not have a choice. You may have to play Daniel Jones.
As far as San Francisco, who do you like in that as far as playing? Obviously, pretty much anybody on their offense right now.
It's funny you say that. I started naming everybody off. I'm like, well, I might as well just say everybody. The only guy I'm not playing are the backups. But it's Brock Purdy, 2 touchdowns again. He just continues to put points up as a fantasy quarterback. Deebo Samuel had his coming out last week when Ayuk went down with the shoulder injury. Ayuk's a wait and see, but if he plays, he's a full go, and you've got him. You're playing an Ayuk, and I think with Kittle, you have to understand. First week, he played 69% of the snaps. He's coming off that groin injury. And then you have 96% of the snaps last week. So he did only have 3 catches on 3 targets for 30 yards, but George Kittle is going to be involved. If Ayuk is out for whatever reason, then Kittle's definitely a guy that I'm looking forward to getting involved a little bit more this week. And I think they're going to find ways with Kyle Shanahan to get Kittle more involved. He's just too valuable to that offense, and he's earned the right to – he's earned his targets for sure.
He has. I think that's it for both teams then, Coach. I'm excited about the game. I'll tell you, the thing that I'm really enjoying watching is watching CMC play with that offense in the second full year, and that's a fun team to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm right there with you, man.
All right, hey, let's move on to a couple more of these questions. Thoughts on Eckler, sell or hang tight? I have Kelly. I'm not selling, and you say you need receiver help. I see that down a couple more. I'm not selling personally, but I'll sell anyone if I'm getting a better deal or a better player. And I don't know how many better players you can get with Eckler. You said I don't know who you could possibly trade for, I guess my point. I'm not trying to get rid of Eckler this early in the year, though.
Yeah, I'm not either. We're 2 weeks in, and Eckler proved in week 1, he's still going to be a very, very big part of that offense. There was concern when Kellen Moore came over that maybe they wouldn't throw the running back as much, but he's way too talented, and he's proven he can get it done on the ground between the tackles or on the outside. So, yeah, I'm not moving Eckler at all. I'm not panicking.
Hear you. Let's move on to the next question. Where's it at? I thought we had one more. Christian Kirk. Thoughts on Christian Kirk this week? Receiver 35 on my list. Not sure what you have him or where you have him from what you've seen. I like his matchup against Houston. I like that he bounced back after he was almost absent altogether week 1. Last week came back and had a much better game. In fact, he did better than Calvin Ridley. So I like him if you have other guys that are play better, but you certainly got to be happy with the way he was able to kind of bounce back after week 1.
Yeah, I'm a Christian Kirk guy, and I think what's with that offense, and we said this before week 1. If you looked at the utilization report that Dwayne McFarland does over at FantasyLife.com, he does a phenomenal job with this. The snap shares you were seeing in the preseason were favoring Zay Jones and 2 receiver sets. We know Christian Kirk is a slot guy, and now you go into this last week he played really, really well. After not playing real well in week 1. So I get the concerns about Christian Kirk. Is he going to be the guy consistently week in and week out? And the thing is, with that Jacksonville offense, it's going to depend on game script. But I'm confident in Christian Kirk's ability and what he did last year. After a lot of people made fun of the contract that he got, and he stepped up and had a monster season last year, best of his career. I still have full confidence in Christian Kirk.
Let's move on to. We got one more question here. I would assume this is probably redraft. What do you like in this one, Coach? You've got St. Brown, Dotson, Etienne, or Ridley. Kane. He's also got Trevor Lawrence as quarterback. Kenneth Walker, Zach Moss. I'm not sure if ROS is. It's pretty close.
So he's got. Is this Randy Miller's question? Sorry about that. I was trying to look something up. So you've got ARSB.
Yes.
Dotson, Etienne, or Ridley with T-Law at quarterback. So I'm assuming you've only got.
It's a trade. Yeah, they're trying to make a trade. Are they trading for? Yep. So take a look at that real quick. Love the questions.
I'm taking the Amon-Ra St. Brown side, every single time on this deal because I believe in what he's doing in Detroit, and what he did, and not only his rookie year, but what he's done so far this year. He's the number 1 target in Detroit. So if I have a chance to get him. Jahan Dotson's off to a slow start, but again, I believe in the talent. It's talent over situation in most cases, unless you're Kyle Pitts. But I will take the Amon-Ra St. Brown Dotson side on that deal.
I'm right there with you. I always feel like I got to get the best player in the deal when I make a trade, and so I believe that's definitely St. Brown. Let's move on to our. Again, we like to do this each week. We feel like. The risers and fallers, obviously a lot of people do these each week. And one of the reasons why I like it is that if you can get early on a riser, this is someone that you can try and make a trade or try and pick up in a waiver wire. First riser for me is Nico Collins. We talked a little bit about the Texans offense and what they were able to do last week in the passing game. 7 for 146 yards, a touchdown on the season. He's already got 13 receptions, 226 yards. This is a guy that a lot of people have been talking about the last few years, and it's kind of nice to kind of see him finally not only get the opportunity to be the number one receiver, but kind of do something with it.
No, hey, Nico Call has been fantastic to watch, man. I apologize for the dogs in the background, but I'm very impressed with Nico Collins. I'm more impressed with C.J. Stroud, which gives you a lot of confidence in that offense, and now I feel very comfortable with what you're doing with there. So, Nico Collins to me is a guy that, well, and you could get him at great value, especially a month before the season. A lot of people are concerned about rookie quarterback coming in. What does this mean for Nico Collins? They brought in Dalton Schultz. They drafted Tank Dell. And so there was concerns, and he's proven he's going to be the wide receiver one in that offense for years to come.
And that offense has proven that it could be fantasy relevant. So,
Yeah.
he's certainly a heck of a lot more valuable now than he was
Brett.
a few weeks ago. Daniel Jones, I put Daniel Jones as a riser, mostly because after a terrible week one, they were already calling for his head. They were talking about, we made a terrible mistake with the long-term extension, but the way he played again, when we talk about risers and fallers, more times than not, we're referring to strictly fantasy. And with him throwing for 321 yards, 2 touchdowns, has already rushed for 102 yards on the season. I'm very comfortable if he's my quarterback one and one quarterback, and if he's my quarterback 2 and super flex leagues.
Yeah, I believe in Brian Daboll as a play caller. And I think if you're trying to count the Dallas Cowboys game in week 1, you've got to just remove that from your memory if you're a Giants fan. And I'm a believer in Daniel Jones. I was a believer in him coming in, and especially in a Brian Daboll offense, what he did last year in year 1 with him in that offense. But I got to I'm glad you put it up there. I was going to make a comment on this. So Todd's he's in a redraft league. They're talking about, I'm assuming these guys might be in leagues together, but Jake Bogan wants them to get insight on D-Hop's ankle. Todd McMillan's upset that D-Hop didn't play well last week. Again, yes, Ryan Tannehill is struggling this year. I get it, but DeAndre Hopkins is a very talented guy. I don't care what his age is. I get Treylon Burks. I'm a big Treylon Burks guy. I know you and I have talked about this before we went on air. Treylon Burks is the future of that offense at the wide receiver position, but DeAndre Hopkins still has a lot to give. So when you ask about his ankle, Jake, I'm not worried about it long term. It's unless it's a high ankle sprain, which it's not, I'm not concerned with it. The concern more is, to your point, is Ryan Tannehill and how often this team wants to run the football. But you can't win football games in the NFL without having some sort of a passing attack. They got to figure that out. But I just had to point that out because I'm cracking up with the conversations here, man. So these guys are right.
Jake wants to know more about Eckler's ankle. Like we said earlier, all we know, didn't practice today. Doesn't look good for him to practice this week or play this week. But I would be surprised if it's any more than next week. They didn't put him on IR. So because of that, it makes me feel like it's only going to be a 3-week injury.
I'll make this very simple. He's got 2 ankles. One of them is injured. It's not serious. He may be out for a week. There you go.
All right. Last riser for me was DeAndre Swift. And we talk about just the week in and week out as far as value changing. Well, DeAndre Swift and what he did last week, 28 carries, 175 yards, touchdown, showed a lot of pop. It's kind of what they want. That's what we wanted to see out of him. We were hoping we'd see it week 1. He got 1 carry week 1. So, man, and you said it earlier, this is his offense going forward. Don't you think, Coach?
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, this is what we wanted when he was in Detroit. And we didn't get it. We got Jamal Williams last year. And so there was, and so now you get him into an offense, fresh start with a top 5 offensive line. They've got, receiver. I mean, we don't need to go through. You got Goddard, you got AJ Brown, you got Devontae Smith. He landed in a perfect situation where teams are not going to be able to load the box. They're more concerned with stopping Jalen Hurts on read option and stopping that passing game. And so it created a great opportunity for DeAndre Swift to slide in there and give them something else. So I'm huge on DeAndre Swift. I drafted him in a lot of leagues this offseason. I picked him up in a lot of drafts coming out as a rookie. So I'm very excited now to finally see DeAndre Swift getting what I believe is the shares he should be getting.
We really need to hope, because his biggest issue is we see games like this, not quite like this, but games like this in the past with Detroit, and then something happens and he gets hurt. So let's hope that he can avoid that, because we've been waiting for this since 2020. Here we go. Fowler. Let's get into your risers. Sorry, Coach. We didn't get into your 3 yet.
So I'll be quick. I've got C.J. Stroud. We talked about him a little bit already with Tank Dell and Nico Collins, what he's doing there. 58 and 91, completing 64% of his passes through his first 2 games, averaging 313 yards passing per game with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So very, very high on C.J. Stroud. I love him come out of Ohio State. Ryan Day runs a pro-style offense, so not surprising to see him make the transition a little bit easier. Sam Laporta is my second riser. He's got 11 targets through 2 games, 5.5 per game. He's caught 10 of 11, 102 yards. Hasn't found the end zone yet. The yards aren't super impressive, but I do believe as the season goes on, you're going to see Sam Laporta more in the seams in the short to intermediate areas of the field. Right now his ADOT is very low, but I expect him to open that up a little bit with Sam Laporta. And the third guy I've got is Brian Robinson. And what a great story coming out last year. He played a lot of years behind some really good guys there in Alabama and sat and waited his term, and he could have easily transferred out. It paid off. He's got 37 carries, 146 yards. His yards per carry aren't great, but he's found the end zone twice. And he's had three receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. Antonio Gibson is non-existent. He's got 9 total touches on the year for only 72 yards, and he has not found the end zone yet. So what we thought he might be in an Eric Bieniemy offense, whether it's a CEH or Jerick McKinnon role in that offense, we have not seen it. It's been all Brian Robinson. So very impressed with Washington. They're 2-0. So you've got them, you got the Eagles, and you got the Cowboys in the NFC East, all 2-0. So once again, that division has proven to be a very, very good division.
It's fun to watch. And, you bring up Brian Robinson, such a hard-nosed runner. You talked about the fact that, his yards per carry may not be great, but what you got to love is just the amount of opportunities he's getting in week in and week out. Trade question. Here we go. We've got, would you trade Jacobs and Ayuk for Diggs? Again, I would assume that this is redraft, but I guess it doesn't matter. I really like what I've seen from Ayuk early on. I feel like he's the wide receiver 1. I know he's a little bit banged up, but I'm not really worried about that as far as the whole season. And as far as Josh Jacobs and the production he's had so far, I don't think that continues. I think they're just not quite there. Remember, he came into camp late. So I kind of would go with that side. I would rather have Jacobs and Ayuk. How about you, Coach?
No, I agree with you 100%. Anytime I could get 2 starters, an RB1 and a wide receiver 1, I'm going to take it. Jacobs is coming off a season where he was the overall RB1, and he's going to finish in the top 12 again this year. And then you take Ayuk with his start this year. He's a top 12 wide receiver, which makes him a wide receiver 1. So if I can make a 2-for-1 trade, as much as I like Stephon Diggs and a good high-powered offense, I'll take 2 starters over 1 every time.
Especially, again, this has to be redraft because it might be a little bit different. But in this you're right. You're getting 2 starters and Jacobs with the running back position, as tough as it is, he's still valuable even though he struggled a bit. I'm going to go through my followers real quick, and then we'll hear yours and maybe get to a couple questions before we get out of here. My followers, Justin Fields. We just haven't seen it. I watched some videos over the weekend of guys just breaking down where he just seems really timid. He brought it up today in interviews where he's talking about, he's robotic. He's just thinking, he kind of wants to go out and just not think and react and just play. And hopefully it happens. But man, I've seen some trades lately, or some people a lot of people are putting him on the block a lot more this week than we've seen during the offseason. Another follower for me is A.J. Dillon. A week after he plays with Aaron Jones, has 13 carries. He had 13 carries and 19 yards in week 1 while playing with Aaron Jones. So you hoped that would be better with Aaron Jones coming out, and got the volume, got 15 carries, but only 57 yards, not able to get in the end zone. And more importantly, not able to kind of extend drives for the Packers. I watched every down, and they just never seem to get in the rhythm. And you saw the value of Aaron Jones when he's in there. That offense is completely different when he's not in there.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on some good ones. I didn't hear you were breaking up in and out. Did you get your third one, or did you just go Justin Fields and A.J. Dillon?
I stopped at A.J. Dillon. I was just hoping for – he's talking about how he kind of expected more with no Aaron Jones, and how he really struggled when Aaron Jones was in there. And he's just not doing – he's just pretty much what a lot of people said in the offseason, and that's very inefficient.
Yeah, I'm not as high as A.J. Dillon right now as I was when he coming out of, I think, Boston College. And Yeah, it's frustrating. I'm with you. I think AJ Dillon for me is a guy that certainly slid down in my rankings as well. And Justin Fields, I'll just say this: I believe in the talent. I really, really do. I was high on him coming out. Again, pro style offense, what he can do in the run game. And look, there's some truth to what he said. Should he have said what he said 2 days ago? He kind of came back and rebutted that today and said he should have phrased things a little bit differently. But hey, look, man, when they went on a run last year, it was because if he didn't see something, he took off and he goes for 1,000 yards, almost breaks a single season record for rushing quarterbacks. If that's not, I think the problem is Matt Eberflus and that offense is you only had 2 design runs in week 1. I don't know what it was last week, but it certainly wasn't as many as it should have been. If you're not using Justin Fields for what he brings to the table and his running ability and how that opens some other things up with a guy like DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, who's off to a nice start, you're doing a disservice to Justin Fields and what he can bring to the table. So I still believe in Justin Fields, but based on the first 2 weeks, I 100% understand why you've got him in your followers.
And the last guy I got on here is Dameon Pierce. He had so much volume last year. Maybe it's a difference in the offensive philosophy because they're obviously throwing it more. But just looking at the numbers, only averaging 2.7 yards a carry, only 4 receptions. He wasn't a big guy getting a bunch of receptions anyways, but still only 4 receptions and no TDs yet. Just a lot of guys were drafting him as number 1 back. And again, they might be the 0 running backs, get him in the 5th round or whatever. But he was certainly someone who a lot of people expected a lot of.
Yeah, I was high on Dameon Pierce coming out of college. I felt like Muschamp did not use him well in Florida. I think we've talked about this on the show. I felt like if you get in the right system in the NFL, he could be a guy that you could rely on. And I think last year he proved that. Slow start this year. I get why he's a faller there as well. I think they're starting to open up this offense a little bit, which is going to take a little bit away from what he brings to the table. There are some, but again, I still believe in the talent. So I'm still holding, but I get why he's on your fallers. It's not been an impressive first 2 weeks of the season for Dameon Pierce and that run game as a whole in Houston. So I 100% get it.
How about you? Who do you got following this week?
So Alexander Madison, we talked about him already. There was I didn't pick him up in any drafts this year. I didn't like where he was going in drafts. I didn't see the value there. I thought he was going a round or 2 higher than he should have. And so I took other positions at that or took other running backs in that spot where his ADP was. The addition of Cam Akers and just a really bad offensive line in terms of the run game. And now I don't see it. And I didn't see it before the year started. And that's proven to be true. There's a difference between starting when you have a spot start when a guy goes down versus all of a sudden in the offseason, you're like, okay, I'm the dude. They trade away Dalvin Cook. I'm the guy. Some guys can handle that pressure and some guys can't. And through the first 2 weeks, he's proven that he can't. Those are questions about Tony Pollard. Look, there was a lot of guys coming this year, as well as Tony Pollard play last year, that felt like the ability for Zeke Elliott to get the goal line in the short yardage carries, as long as he was still seeing the volume. There were concerns about, can Tony Pollard be as efficient if he's the guy? And look, so far he hasn't. He's only 3.9 yards per carry. So his yards per carry isn't great, but he gives you enough explosiveness. It's like anything. And I hope Dameon Pierce figures it out, or Alexander Madison figures it out, but I just don't see how he's going to. The other guy I've got is Deshaun Watson. He's only completing 55% of his passes. He's only got 389 yards passing, which is less than 200 per game. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. We talked about this in the beginning of the show. We talked about Nick Chubb injury. You've got David Njoku. You've got Amari Cooper. You brought in Elijah Moore. You've got Donovan Peoples-Jones. There's no excuses for Deshaun Watson to be playing the way that he is right now. It's not the play calling. It's he does not look comfortable in the pocket. And I think there's a struggle for him to go through a full field read, which is getting to his third option in a route concept. I think he struggles there the longer he holds on to the ball. He's not throwing the ball on time and in rhythm. And then the last guy I've got is Jahan Dotson. He's only got 12 targets all season. He's only got 8 grabs for 62 yards in 2 games. That's a guy that I was high on and maybe a guy that I missed on. I really felt like he complemented what Scary Terry brings that offense. I thought Sam Howell had a chance late in the season to play as a rookie, and let's see if he can be the guy. But just the lack of usage for Jahan Dotson. It's not that he's not on the field. It's not that he's not participating in the routes. He's just not getting the ball. He's not earning the targets in that offense yet. So that's very concerning for me with Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And, they're 2-0. We just kind of expected more out of them. Obviously, it's early, but you kind of like to see guys pop and hope that, everything that you heard about or read about over the off season was going to kind of come to fruition, but it's still early, and let's see where that goes from here on out.
Hey, I got a
Coach,
question
great.
for you.
Yeah, ask away, Coach.
Well, that Todd asked earlier. He asked about Zach
Well, what
Moss
is
or
it?
Zach Moss or DeAndre Swift, and I made a note to get back to that. So it seems like an obvious answer, right? But I want to get your take on this before I give my 2 cents on it. And you might even want your change back. But what do you think about Zach Moss versus DeAndre Swift this week?
Well, did you see the volume Zach Moss got?
Yeah, I did.
You see, part of me, let me look at where I have running backs this week. Zach Moss as it relates to the fact that we're talking about 2020 running backs in the same class. Zach Moss, both these guys on second teams is kind of weird to me. But it's Swift for me. I got Swift at 17 and Moss at 29. So it's Swift for me.
Yeah, I got Swift at 14 and Moss at 23. Moss faces it's not a bad matchup against Baltimore. They've given up some plays in the run game, but now you're looking at potentially if you're without Anthony Richardson, that's a tough deal with the Colts. Now, granted, it gives Moss more opportunities, especially in the red zone, because Gardner Minshew's not a threat.
But they'll have nothing else to focus on.
Correct, but DeAndre Swift. I mean, coming off, he plays against Tampa Bay this week. That's a B plus A minus matchup in my opinion. He's just coming off all that volume. I think you have to start DeAndre Swift. I don't think it's close. I think if you're gonna go touch for touch, and then what DeAndre Swift can give you a little bit in the passing game, and then the matchups, I think it's a landslide for DeAndre Swift. The only thing that would hurt that Philadelphia gets up big, you start to give some other guys like Boston Scott and those guys some reps, in the second half because the game's gotten away from them. But other than that, if both those guys are going to play equal number of snaps, I think it's a landslide.
I think you're giving Tampa Bay. I don't think you're giving Tampa Bay enough respect. They're 2-0. Their defense is playing well. So I don't know if Philadelphia's going to go in there and roll them, but it doesn't change who I'd rather have play this week. It's still Swift over Moss.
Well, it's Baker Mayfield, and I get how he's played so far this year, but it's still Baker Mayfield against a very good Philadelphia defense. So, and I get the injuries. Like Bradbury's out, and I get the injuries on the Philadelphia side, but I still think it's a game that Philadelphia wins. And look, we're saying if they get out, big. I'm not assuming they're going to, but right. I'm certainly not assuming it's the other way around, that Tampa Bay gets out big and we're looking at it the other way. I think if someone's going to get out big, it's going to be Philly.
Well, Coach, that was a great show. Full hour. Everyone that came in, we love the questions. Come in every week. We'll do our best to get to every one of them. We'll be on Sunday morning with our start and sits, who we think will win. And, looking forward to it as always, Coach.
No, hey, man, appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. Appreciate all the questions. Hopefully we got to all of them. I'm not sure that we did, but and Todd, to answer your question, it is E.H. Taylor small batch that I'm sipping on. So great call, good guess on your part. You nailed it. And I guess if you watch the show enough, it's one of my favorite sipping bourbons. But appreciate you guys all jumping in, and look forward to getting after it Sunday morning with all the starts and sits and the Sunday slate.
All right, everybody. You guys have a great night watching San Francisco, New York. We'll see you Sunday morning.